Hold on to your seats because today we are diving headfirst into a story so wild, so petty, and so perfectly satisfying it's going to make your blood boil and then cheer. Imagine this. A powerful, untouchable HOA president, let's call her Evelyn, the Queen of Rules, thinks she can casually devastate a man's livelihood and recreational retreat just to prove a point. She blocks the only access road to his remote cabin, trapping his supplies and destroying his summer plans. But Evelyn failed to consider one tiny geographical detail. The only way she and the entire lakefront community could access the rest of the world was through a private, decades-old steel truss bridge. A bridge that just happened to be on his surveyed property line. When our protagonist, the Ranger, got hit with that spiteful ban, he didn't call a lawyer. He called a welder. You are about to witness the moment an entire sprawling multi-million-dollar community got locked in a velvet cage, trapped by their own pettiness, all because they messed with the wrong cabin owner. This isn't just a win. This is nuclear payback. What is up, you vengeful legends? Before we dive into the most satisfying property line war you will ever see, you know what to do. Stop whatever you're doing, smash that like button so hard it shatters, and hit subscribe with the bell notification turned on. We track the pettiest power trippers and deliver the sweetest, most deserved karmic justice right here, every single week. Get comfortable because this story is long, detailed, and utterly delicious. Let's get to the drama. Our story begins with the Ranger, real name Elias, a man who spent his life building a little slice of remote heaven. For 3 decades, Elias had owned a secluded 20-acre parcel on the far side of Lake Whisper, accessible only by a single winding dirt track that led directly to his custom-built log cabin. This track crossed a crucial but small, steel truss bridge over a seasonal creek before snaking into the woods, ending at his property line, which sat just outside the official boundaries of the Pinnacle Crest Homeowners Association, PCHA. Elias and the PCHA had always maintained a handshake agreement. He'd keep the bridge stable. It was technically on his deeded land, though it was the only practical way for the PCHA to access the state highway, and they'd let him use the access track which cut across a small, undeveloped corner of their land. It was a symbiotic relationship built on mutual respect and convenience. That is, until the arrival of Evelyn Hawthorne. Evelyn, a retired corporate CFO with a clipboard and caramel latte energy, had recently taken over the PCHA presidency. She saw the HOA not as a management committee, but as a minor kingdom, and she viewed Elias, a man who drove a beat-up pickup and preferred flannel to golf shirts, as a lower-caste interloper. Her initial move was seemingly minor, a brightly colored, officious-looking sign placed right at the beginning of the access track that read, "Private property, PCHA access only. Violators will be prosecuted." Elias initially ignored it. He was loading supplies for a 2-week fishing trip, his truck already full of lumber and gear. As he drove past the sign, he noticed a pristine white SUV blocking the path just past the bridge. Behind the wheel was Evelyn, sunglasses perched atop her perfectly coiffed silver hair. "Mr. Thorne," she announced, using a tone that could curdle milk, "you are trespassing. This road is PCHA property, and your access agreement is now void. The board voted last night unanimously to restrict this easement solely to dues-paying members. You are not a member." Elias, incredulous, tried to reason with her, pointing out the decades-old tradition, the fact that he was the only one maintaining the critical bridge, and that this sudden move would leave his cabin effectively landlocked. Evelyn simply smiled a thin, predatory smile. "The board is within its rights to manage its assets, Mr. Thorne. Perhaps you should have considered joining us? Now move your vehicle off PCHA property immediately, or I will have it towed." Elias, needing to avoid a scene and already late for his trip, backed his truck up, parked on his own property line next to the bridge, and hiked the 1.5 miles into his cabin, leaving all his supplies behind. It was an infuriating inconvenience, a petty show of power, but he figured a simple cease and desist letter from his lawyer would straighten out the misunderstanding. He was wrong. The next morning, a certified letter arrived taped to his cabin door, hand-delivered during the night by someone hiking the trail. It was a formal notification from the PCHA signed by Evelyn, asserting their exclusive right to the access path and threatening to press felony trespassing charges if Elias so much as stepped onto their land again. It ended with a chilling postscript. "Should you attempt to cross the bridge and access the county road, Please be aware that the bridge is currently scheduled for safety inspection and removal due to its structurally compromising location on our land. This was a bold-faced lie. The bridge was on his land, but the threat was clear. Evelyn was going to destroy his access to spite him. Elias returned to the bridge 3 days later, his patience worn thin. He found the access track now completely barricaded with 2 large concrete K-rails, the kind used for highway construction, cemented into the ground, a chain-link fence strung between them. His lawyer's initial letter had been dismissed by the PCHA's counsel with a laughably vague and baseless claim of eminent domain precedent, based on an obscure 1950s county road ordinance that didn't apply. The HOA had lawyered up, and they were playing dirty. The true shock came when Elias crossed the bridge back onto his own property to assess the situation. Right where the dirt track met the small, old bridge, the only structure connecting the PCHA's sprawling, gated community to the outside world, Evelyn and 2 PCHA maintenance workers were busily erecting a second concrete barrier, this one facing the PCHA side. "Just a temporary measure for safety, Mr. Thorne," Evelyn purred, watching him from her side of the divide. "We need to ensure unauthorized vehicles don't endanger our residents while we evaluate the bridge's stability." Elias's blood ran cold. This wasn't about the access track anymore. She was sealing him in. He had a second, more rugged access path to the county road, the one that didn't require crossing the bridge, but it was a grueling, hour-long 4x4 crawl. Evelyn's move was calculated. By blocking both ends of the access track, one with the K-rails, one with the safety barrier, she had effectively eliminated his quick and easy route, forcing him to take the impossible path or simply abandon his cabin. But there was a more insidious plot at play. Elias, now checking his deed and survey map for the 100th time, confirmed a critical detail. The entire steel truss bridge, from abutment to abutment, sat 100% within his surveyed property lines, the result of a poorly drawn 1947 partition map. The PCHA had no right to restrict his use of the bridge, and Evelyn's safety inspection and removal threat was a direct threat to his property. He took hundreds of photos, noting the placement of Evelyn's new barrier, a wooden sawhorse and a flimsy chain, easily moved, but clearly demonstrating PCHA intent. His next confrontation was on the phone with his lawyer, who delivered the gut punch. "Elias, she knows you're landlocked and she's betting you can't afford a long, drawn-out injunction process. She's stalling, running up the bill, and forcing you to sell your land to the HOA for pennies." The lawyer laid out the grim truth. A court battle could take 18 months, cost 6 figures, and Evelyn, using PCHA dues, had an endless war chest. Elias was helpless, trapped, and slowly being squeezed out of his own life. The final, crushing blow came that afternoon. Evelyn's security firm, a collection of hulking men in black uniforms, were now stationed on the PCHA side of the K-rails, physically blocking his route. The next morning, a drone, piloted by one of the PCHA residents, no doubt, buzzed Elias's property, capturing every movement, every detail of his frustration. He was being monitored, taunted, and driven to despair. He couldn't access his supplies, he couldn't leave easily, and the Queen of Rules was winning. Elias stood on the edge of the bridge, watching the PCHA residents, the very people who had once waved to him, now drive past the barrier with smirks, heading out to the world he was locked away from. Evelyn's message was loud and clear. "You are nothing and you are trapped." Elias stopped fighting the HOA's legal team and started studying his own property deed. He spent 3 days poring over the 1947 survey, cross-referencing it with modern GPS coordinates. He wasn't looking for a loophole. He was looking for confirmation. He found it. The bridge, a crucial single-lane 40-foot span, was undeniably his. It wasn't an easement, it wasn't a shared thoroughfare. It was Elias Thorne's private property. He made 2 calls. The first was to the county registrar, requesting a certified stamped copy of his deed and the original survey map, complete with all meets and bounds. The second call was to a local retired master welder named Mac. "Mac," Elias said, "I need 2 heavy-duty 5-foot-tall steel gates, custom-built to the exact width of a 1940s-era single-lane bridge. They need to be hinged to the steel superstructure and lockable with a commercial-grade anti-cut shackle." Mac, a man who appreciated dramatic irony, simply replied, How fast can you clear a path, son? Elias then drove the long, grueling 404 path out and met Mac. 2 days later, a flatbed truck carrying 2 colossal black steel gates and a mobile welding rig arrived at Elias's remote cabin, having also taken the back road. The operation was swift, surgical, and timed for maximum impact. 7 a.m. on a Saturday, when most of Pinnacle Crest was preparing for their weekend activities. Elias and Mac worked quickly. Mac welded the first gate, a perfect fit, directly onto the steel supports on Elias's side of the bridge, the side Evelyn had tried to block. Elias attached a massive chrome padlock. Then came the main event. They moved to the other side, the side leading into the PCHA's private road, the only way their multi-million-dollar homes could access the rest of civilization. Using the certified deed and map as their justification and placing a massive, laminated sign clearly stating private property, access restricted by owner. Mac expertly welded the second, identical steel gate to the bridge's main beams sealing the PCHA community in. The gate was secured with an even larger industrial-grade padlock. Just as Mac was completing the final weld, a pristine white SUV screeched to a halt. It was Evelyn. "What in God's name are you doing, Thorne? You can't do this. This is the only way out!" Elias, standing proudly next to his 2 new imposing gates, simply held up the stamped deed. "You're right, Evelyn," he said, his voice calm and lethal. "It is the only way out. And according to this official county document, the entire bridge is my private property. You voted to void my easement and restrict my access across your land out of spite. Well, I'm simply exercising my right to control access across mine." The resolution was instant and spectacular. Elias hadn't blocked the road. He had locked his bridge. Evelyn's face went from pale shock to apoplectic purple. He had turned her own power play, her own strategy of landlocking, against her, and he had done it legally, publicly, and irreversibly. The fallout was a maelstrom of immediate, pure, unadulterated panic. Within the hour, the PCHA gate was a scene of utter chaos. Car alarms blared, residents screamed at Evelyn, and a line of angry luxury SUVs, trapped, stretched back for a quarter-mile. People were late for flights, missing weddings, and couldn't get to their weekend yacht charters. An emergency medical services, EMS vehicle, attempting to respond to a call from within the community, was forced to stop dead at the locked gate. This single event, the denial of an emergency vehicle, was the fatal blow to Evelyn's reign. Elias, anticipating this, had a notary public on standby who documented the whole scene, legally proving the community was locked in and unable to receive emergency aid. The local sheriff's deputy arrived, confused, and was immediately cornered by a hysterical Evelyn demanding an arrest. The deputy, however, calmly reviewed Elias's certified deed, checked the boundary lines, and delivered the stunning verdict. "Mr. Thorne is fully within his rights. The bridge is private property. If the PCHA wants out, they need to talk to the bridge owner." The true payback began as dozens of multi-millionaire residents, realizing their property values had instantly plummeted to zero because they were trapped on an island, descended upon Evelyn. The board called an emergency, outdoor meeting right at the locked bridge. Within an hour, Evelyn was verbally savaged by her former allies. Accusations flew: misuse of funds, reckless legal action, and, the most damning charge, gross incompetence resulting in literal imprisonment. By 3 p.m., a visibly shaking Evelyn had signed a full, public resignation, effective immediately, tearfully conceding that her actions were misguided and taken without proper consultation. The interim board's first act was to send a 4-person delegation, hats in hand, to Elias's property. They begged for the key. Elias, enjoying a cold drink on his porch, was unmoved. "You voided my access and threatened to destroy my bridge," he reminded them, his eyes cold. "You trapped me, and I simply used the same tactics you taught me." He presented them with his payback demands. 1. A signed, perpetual, irrevocable easement for his full access track, registered with the county, paid for by the PCHA. 2. A public, written apology from the entire former board, acknowledging their malicious intent. 3. Full reimbursement for all his legal fees, custom welding, and time lost. 4. A $100,000 maintenance and access fee to open the gate and never speak of the matter again. The interim president, desperate to escape the nightmare, didn't hesitate. He signed the agreement on the spot. The funds were wired and the easement papers notarized within the hour. Elias then strolled down to the bridge, unlocked the two massive gates, and watched as the pent-up wave of trapped vehicles poured out, finally free, the air thick with the smell of expensive gasoline and absolute defeat. The aftermath was a glorious, protracted victory. The new PCHA board, now humbled and terrified of a repeat, installed new leadership who had been vehemently against Evelyn's spiteful tactics from the start. They didn't just meet Elias's demands. They bent over backward, installing security cameras on the access track solely for his protection, and planting mature trees to screen his property from the prying eyes of the community he had conquered. The final nail in Evelyn's coffin was not the loss of her HOA title, but the financial and social ruin that followed. Because of the documented EMS blockage, the county and state departments launched an investigation into the PCHA's access infrastructure. The findings were damning. The PCHA had allowed other vital infrastructure, including water lines and cable conduits that ran parallel to Elias's bridge, to fall into severe disrepair, all while Evelyn was blowing HOA funds on pointless legal fights. This negligence, combined with the proven malice towards Elias, led to a cascade of lawsuits from the trapped residents. Evelyn, who had personally orchestrated the ban, was named in every single filing. Faced with ruinous personal liability and having lost all social standing in the community she adored, she was forced to sell her sprawling lakefront mansion at a deep discount, moving to an unnamed landlocked condominium complex in the city. The new HOA president, a man named Tom who understood the true nature of power, ensured that Elias's victory was permanent. Not only did Elias get his full, signed easement, but the HOA, as an act of perpetual peace, began paying Elias a yearly six-figure fee, not just the one-time $100,000, to continue allowing access across his now legendary bridge. They had tried to trap the cabin owner. Instead, they had turned him into their private toll collector, making him one of the wealthiest men in the valley. To cement his victory and deliver the final, beautiful secondary revenge, Elias used a small portion of his annual fee to commission a bronze plaque. He had it bolted directly to the steel truss of his bridge facing the PCHA side. It read, "The Evelyn Hawthorne Memorial Bridge, access granted by the grace of the owner." Every resident of Pinnacle Crest, every time they drove out to the world, was reminded of the woman who had locked them in and the man who had bought his freedom with two padlocks and a steel gate. Tell me that wasn't the most beautiful, satisfying revenge story you have ever heard. The Ranger turned an HOA president's pettiness into a massive payday and public shaming. Now it's your turn to weigh in. What was the most shocking moment? Was it the K-rails, the locked-in EMS vehicle, or the bronze plaque? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more epic power trip failures and absolutely hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next time a Karen meets her karmic match. We'll see you in the next one.